At 6:23 a.m. on December 18, 1944, Staff Sergeant Marcus Holloway crouched in the gunner's seat of an M4 Sherman tank at a crossroads 3 miles east of Stavelot, Belgium, watching through his periscope as a Panther tank rolled into position 800 yards away. His hands were shaking, not from cold, from knowing exactly what was about to happen. The Panther's frontal armor was 120 millimeters thick. Holloway's 75 millimeter gun could penetrate maybe 90 millimeters at this range. The math was simple. The math was death. His loader, Private Eddie Garza from San Antonio, had already loaded an armor-piercing round. His commander, Lieutenant Paul Henderson from Connecticut, was calling targets over the radio. Standard procedure: aim for the front, fire, hope, die. Holloway had watched 4 Shermans burn in the last 3 days. 16 men. He knew their names. He'd eaten breakfast with them, but this morning, Holloway wasn't planning to aim at the front. He was planning to aim at the ground 6 feet in front of the Panther's tracks and do something the manual said was impossible. The brass said was wasteful, and his instructors at Fort Knox said would get him court-martialed. He was planning to break every rule he'd been taught because the rules were killing everyone. Marcus James Holloway was 26 years old. Farm kid from outside Tulsa. Grew up hunting rabbits and prairie dogs with his grandfather's .22 rifle. His grandfather had taught him something the Army never mentioned. Bullets don't always travel in straight lines. They skip, they bounce, they ricochet. Shoot the dirt in front of a running rabbit, his grandfather had said. The rock fragments will get him even if your aim's off. Holloway had enlisted in June 1942, trained at Fort Knox as a tank gunner, top of his class. He could hit a moving target at 200 yards. He could identify enemy armor by silhouette in 3 seconds. He'd memorized penetration tables, trajectory charts, ammunition characteristics. None of it mattered in the Ardennes forest in December 1944. Holloway had arrived in France in September with the 3rd Armored Division. His crew had been together for 8 months. Lieutenant Henderson was 24, a college graduate who actually listened to his NCOs. Driver Corporal James Jimmy Tucker from Detroit could feel terrain through the tank's steel floor. Bowgunner Private Roy Patterson from Alabama never missed with the .30 caliber. And loader Eddie Garza was the fastest Holloway had ever seen, 4 seconds from empty to loaded. They'd named their Sherman Oklahoma Thunder, painted it on the barrel. They'd fought through France, survived the approach to the German border, 0 Panzer kills, 17 missions, still alive, which made them lucky. The Sherman had one fatal problem that was killing American tank crews every single day. It couldn't penetrate German heavy armor from the front. The Panther tank's frontal plate was 120 millimeters of hardened steel angled at 55 degrees. The Tiger's was even thicker. The Sherman's 75 millimeter gun-firing standard AP rounds could barely scratch them at combat ranges. American doctrine said to flank them, get to their sides or rear where the armor was thinner. Simple on paper, suicidal in practice. German tank commanders knew American doctrine. They positioned themselves with flanks protected. They worked in pairs. They baited Shermans into the open, then killed them from cover. The kill ratio was devastating. For every Panther destroyed, the Germans knocked out 5 Shermans, sometimes more. The crews called it murder. The brass called it acceptable losses. Holloway had watched it happen again and again. The first crew he lost were friends. Sergeant Robert Bobby Chen, 23, from San Francisco. Chen had been a gunner in the tank that usually ran beside Oklahoma Thunder. Tank commander was Lieutenant David Morrison, 25, from Portland. Driver was Corporal Luis Ramirez, 22, from El Paso. Loader was Private First Class Tommy O'Brien, 19, from Boston. Bow gunner was Private Michael Kowalski, 20, from Chicago. December 15, 1944. Morning patrol near Malmedy. They'd encountered 2 Panthers at a village intersection. Morrison's tank, Golden Gate, took the lead. Standard doctrine: fire and maneuver. Morrison fired first. The round sparked off the Panther's glacis plate. Penetration: 0. The Panther's return shot hit Golden Gate's frontal armor. The 75mm German round punched through like paper, penetrated the fighting compartment, detonated the ammunition. The Sherman exploded. Holloway had been 200 yards behind. He watched the turret blow 30 feet into the air, watched the flames. Nobody got out. Nobody could have. The temperature inside reached 3,000 degrees in seconds. Chen had shown Holloway pictures of his little sister the night before. Morrison had been planning to propose to his girlfriend when he got home. Ramirez taught Garza Spanish phrases. O'Brien had just turned 19 3 days earlier. Kowalski sang Italian opera songs that made everyone laugh. 5 men. 1 shot. 3 seconds. Henderson had ordered Holloway to reverse. They'd retreated. Standard procedure when outgunned. The second crew died 2 days later. Staff Sergeant Vincent DeLuca, 27, from Brooklyn. Tank commander? His crew had been in country for only 3 weeks. Sergeant Frank Whitmore, 24, gunner from Tennessee. Corporal James Lee, 21, driver from Georgia. Private Danny Foster, 19, loader from Michigan. Private Carl Jensen, 20, bow gunner from Wisconsin. December 17th, afternoon. Defensive position outside Stavelot. A Tiger tank appeared from the tree line. 800 yards. DeLuca's Sherman, Brooklyn brawler, was dug in, hull down behind an embankment. Perfect defensive position. DeLuca ordered Whitmore to fire. 6 shots, 6 hits. All 6 rounds bounced off or shattered against the Tiger's armor. The Tiger's first shot missed by inches. The second shot didn't. It hit Brooklyn Brawler's turret at the gun mantlet, the weakest point. The round penetrated. The explosion killed DeLuca and Whitmore instantly. Foster was blown out of the turret, engulfed in flames. Lee and Jensen got out through the bottom hatches, but Lee was burning. He died before the medics arrived. Holloway had watched through binoculars from 400 yards away. Watched Foster running, screaming, burning. Watched until he fell. That night, Holloway couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. He kept seeing Foster running. Henderson found him sitting behind the tank at 0200 hours. "We can't fight them straight up," Henderson had said quietly. "The math doesn't work." "I know," Holloway had replied. "So we stopped fighting straight up." The M4 Sherman medium tank was a workhorse. Reliable. Easy to maintain. Fast. Crews loved it for everything except the one thing that mattered most: killing enemy tanks before enemy tanks killed them. The 75mm M3 gun was designed in the late 1930s, adequate against German Panzer IIIs and IVs, completely outmatched by Panthers and Tigers. The problem was physics. Kinetic energy penetration depends on projectile mass, velocity, and the hardness differential between projectile and armor. The Sherman's AP round traveled at 2,030 feet per second. It could penetrate 90 millimeters of armor at 500 yards if it hit perpendicular. But Panther frontal armor was 120 millimeters angled at 55 degrees. Effective thickness: 180 millimeters. The round simply wasn't powerful enough. That fraction of difference meant death. American tankers knew it. German tankers knew it. High command knew it. The solution was obvious. Give Shermans bigger guns. The British had done it with their Firefly variant. Same Sherman chassis with a 17-pounder gun that could kill Panthers frontally. The Americans had designed the M4A3E8 with a 76mm high-velocity gun. Better, but still insufficient against Tigers. But neither were available in sufficient numbers in December 1944. Supply chains prioritized infantry and artillery. Tank production focused on quantity over quality. Patton's Third Army alone needed hundreds of replacement Shermans every month. No time to retrofit better guns. No authorization for field modifications. The 75mm Sherman was what crews got. Within specifications, the technical report said. Adequate for intended purpose, the evaluation stated. Crews should employ combined arms, tactics, and flanking maneuvers. The doctrine manuals instructed. The crews called it bureaucratic murder. Holloway had read the field manuals cover to cover, studied German armor vulnerabilities, memorized weak points, lower frontal plates, turret rings, vision ports, rear engine decks, all the places a 75mm round could penetrate. The problem, you couldn't hit those spots from the front, and getting to the sides or rear meant exposing your own tank's weaker armor while crossing open ground against an enemy who could kill you from a mile away. December 17, 1944. 1640. Hours. Holloway watched the third crew die, Lieutenant James Hartley, 23, from Ohio, tank commander. Sergeant Bill Hammond, 25, gunner from Kentucky. Corporal Steve Martinez, 24, driver from New Mexico. Private First Class Andy Thompson, 21, loader from Iowa. Private Jack Sullivan, 19, bow gunner from Massachusetts. Their Sherman, Ohio Steel, had been positioned on the right flank of the defensive line. When the Tiger appeared, Hartley had done everything right. He'd maneuvered to get an angle on the Tiger's side armor. He'd used terrain for cover. He'd coordinated with infantry support. But there were two Tigers. The second one had been waiting in a concealed position. Holloway listened over the radio net. "Contact. Tiger tank, 11 o'clock, 700 yards, Hartley's voice. Calm and professional. Traversing, Hammond responding. Firing. The sound of the 75mm gun. 3 seconds of silence. Hit. No penetration. Firing again. Another shot. Another hit. The round sparked off the Tiger's side armor. Firing he, targeting tracks. High explosive rounds. Trying to disable it. Smart thinking. Then a different voice on the radio. Panicked. Tiger 2! Tiger 2 on R6. The second Tiger had maneuvered behind them. Reverse. Reverse. Hartley shouting now. The sound of an explosion. Massive. The radio went silent mid-transmission. Holloway had seen the smoke plume. Black and orange. Ammunition cooking off. Ohio Steel had taken a hit from behind. The round had penetrated the rear armor, only 40mm thick, and detonated inside the engine compartment. The fire spread forward into the fighting compartment in seconds. Martinez and Sullivan got out. Hammond was killed in the initial explosion. Thompson was trapped when the turret jammed. Hartley tried to pull him out. Both burned. 3 dead. 2 wounded badly enough they'd never return to duty. The Tigers withdrew before anyone could get revenge. That evening, the battalion's intelligence officer updated the loss statistics. In the 6 days since the German offensive began, the 3rd Armored Division had lost 47 Sherman tanks in direct combat with German armor, 37 complete losses, 142 crew casualties, 89 killed, 53 wounded, 0 Panthers destroyed frontally at ranges over 400 yards, 0 Tigers destroyed frontally at any range. The pattern was clear. Shermans that engaged German heavy tanks from the front died. Shermans that tried to flank them often died before reaching firing positions. Shermans that waited for infantry support watched their infantry get shredded by German machine guns. Holloway sat in Oklahoma Thunder's turret that night and did math. His crew had a 37% chance of surviving the next 4 weeks based on casualty rates. If they encountered a Panther or Tiger frontally, their survival chance dropped to 11%. He knew the solution the Army wanted. Wait for air support. Call for artillery. Coordinate with tank destroyers. Attempt flanking only with covering fire. But air support couldn't fly in this weather. Artillery was spread thin, supporting infantry. Tank destroyers were too few. And flanking maneuvers took time that crews didn't have when a Tiger appeared at 800 yards and fired every 7 seconds. Holloway thought about his grandfather, about ricochets, about bullets that don't travel straight, about the fact that armor-piercing rounds are made of hardened steel, about the fact that hardened steel bounces off hard surfaces at predictable angles, about the fact that every tank has a weakly armored underbelly, where the hull sits close to the ground, about the fact that nobody was trying it because it wasn't in the manual. He pulled out his notebook and started calculating. Angles. December 18, 1944. Aero 5:30 hours. Lieutenant. Henderson found Holloway awake, sitting in the gunner's seat with a notebook full of geometry. Can't sleep? Henderson asked. Thinking, Holloway replied. About? Skipping stones. Henderson climbed into the turret. Explain. Holloway showed him the calculations. AP rounds are hardened steel. They're designed to penetrate armor, but they're also designed to stay intact on impact. That means when they hit something hard at an angle, they ricochet. Predictably. Keep going. The ground is frozen. Hard as concrete. If I fire at the ground 6 to 8 feet in front of a Panther's tracks at a 10-degree depression angle, the round should skip up at approximately a 15 to 20-degree angle, right into the belly armor, which is only 40 millimeters thick. Henderson was silent for a moment. Has anyone tested this? Not officially. It's considered a waste of ammunition. Manual says aim for center mass of the target. But you think it'll work. My grandfather taught me to ricochet 22 rounds off rocks to hit rabbits. Same physics. Bigger scale. Henderson looked at the notebook, looked at Holloway. If you miss, you've wasted a shot. If the ricochet angle is wrong, you've wasted a shot. If it works, but we can't prove it worked, command will say you're inventing stories to cover for missing. Yes, sir. And if it doesn't work at all, you'll have ignored doctrine and training for something you learned killing rabbits in Oklahoma. Yes, sir. Henderson was quiet. Then, Hayes is going out this morning. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, commander of another Sherman in the platoon. 22 years old, from California. Married, wife was pregnant. Hayes had been asking everyone if there was anything they could do about the Panther problem. He asked me yesterday if there was anything you could do, Henderson continued. Said his gunner, Sergeant Miller, is terrified. Won't admit it, but Hayes can tell. Miller's hands shake every time they roll out. Holloway knew Miller. Good kid from Nebraska, 21 years old, 3 weeks in combat. Had watched 2 tanks burn on his first day. Hayes is going to die if we don't do something different, Henderson said quietly. Miller's going to die. The whole crew. Holloway looked at his calculations. This could work. It should work. Should isn't good enough. You need to be sure. I'm sure about the physics. I'm not sure about the variables. Frozen ground versus mud. Distance estimation. Precise angle control with a tank gun. So you need to test it. Yes, sir? Officially, I can't authorize that. Waste of ammunition. Violation of firing doctrine. I know. Unofficially, Henderson said, if 3 rounds go missing from our ammo count and you blame it on a paperwork error, I won't investigate too hard. That morning at 600 hours, Holloway did something he'd never done in his military career. He lied on an official ammunition count form. He signed for 71 rounds instead of 74. Tucker drove Oklahoma Thunder to a remote field 200 yards from the bivouac area. Henderson posted Patterson as a lookout. If anyone official approached, Patterson would signal and they'd claim they were conducting maintenance. Holloway had found a wrecked German half-track the previous day. It was sitting abandoned in a field already destroyed by artillery. Perfect target. He'd measured the distance, 150 yards. He'd paced off the ground in front of it. Frozen solid, hard enough, Garza loaded an AP round. Holloway's hands were shaking, not from cold, from knowing this was either going to work or prove he was an idiot risking his crew on a theory from rabbit hunting. He aimed at the ground 8 feet in front of the half-track. 10-degree depression angle. Checked it twice. Checked it again. Firing, he said quietly. The gun recoiled. The sound echoed across the field. The round hit the frozen ground exactly where Holloway aimed. The impact threw up frozen dirt and created a visible spark. The round skipped upward. It missed the half-track completely, flew over it and disappeared into the trees. Damn, Tucker muttered. Angle was too shallow, Holloway said. Need more depression. 6 feet instead of 8. Garza loaded another round. Nobody argued. Holloway adjusted. Aimed at the ground 6 feet in front of the target. 12-degree depression angle. Firing. The round hit the ground. Skipped up. Hit the half-track in the lower chassis. The impact was visible even at 150 yards. The round had punched through the thin armor and exited out the top. Perfect. Holy shit, Garza whispered. Do it again, Henderson ordered. Prove it's not luck, 3rd round. Same aiming point, same angle, same result. The round skipped off the frozen ground and slammed into the half-track's underside. Another penetration. 2 for 2. Holloway's hands stopped shaking. It works. The physics are solid. If the ground's hard enough and the distance is right, we can skip rounds into belly armor. Henderson climbed out of the commander's hatch, looked at the half-track, looked at the frozen field. If this works in combat and you kill a Panther, you're a genius. If it doesn't work, you'll have wasted ammunition and potentially gotten us killed trying something unauthorized. Yes, sir. If you do this and command finds out you ignored doctrine, they could court-martial you. Yes, sir. But Hayes is going to die if somebody doesn't do something different. Yes, sir. Henderson looked at Holloway for a long moment. Then he nodded. The next time we see a Panther, you have my authorization to engage however you think is most effective. That's an order. Understood. Sir. 2 hours later, at 08:23 hours, they got their chance. At 08:23 hours on December 18, 1944, Oklahoma Thunder rolled toward a crossroads 3 miles east of Stavelot as part of a 4-tank patrol. Hayes's Sherman, California Dreaming, was on point. 2 other tanks covered the flanks. Henderson had positioned Oklahoma Thunder in the rear as overwatch. The mission was reconnaissance. Intel reported German armor in the area. Find it. Report it. Withdraw. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. At 08:37 hours, Hayes radioed contact. Panther tank 12 o'clock, 700 yards, hull down behind a stone wall. Holloway traversed the turret. Found it in his periscope. The Panther was perfectly positioned. Only the turret and gun visible. Frontal armor angled toward them. Textbook defensive position. Hayes's options were terrible. He couldn't flank open ground on both sides. He couldn't retreat. The Panther would fire the moment Hayes turned and exposed his side. He couldn't hide. The Panther had already seen them. All units, halt, Henderson ordered. Hayes, reverse slowly. We'll cover. Hayes began backing up. The Panther didn't fire, waiting for a better shot. Patient. Holloway watched the range. 720 yards, 740, 780. Then a second Panther appeared from a concealed position on the left. 650 yards. Second Panther! 9 o'clock! Someone yelled over the radio. The first Panther fired. The round missed Hayes by 3 feet, impacted the ground behind California Dreaming. If Hayes had still been advancing, it would have hit. All units, reverse. Break contact! Henderson shouting now, but Hayes's driver panicked. Instead of reversing, he turned the tank trying to present a frontal angle to the second Panther. The maneuver exposed California Dreaming's side armor to the first Panther. Hayes, no! Don't turn! Henderson screaming into the radio. Too late. The first Panther fired again. The round hit California Dreaming's side armor at the sponson. Penetrated. The Sherman shuddered but didn't explode. Not an ammunition hit, but bad. Smoke poured from the hatches. Bail out! Bail out! Hayes's voice on the radio strained. The crew started evacuating. Driver first. Bow gunner. Loader. Hayes climbed out of the commander's hatch, helping his gunner, Miller, who was wounded. The second Panther was traversing toward them. 7 seconds from firing. Tucker, get us forward now, Henderson ordered. Oklahoma Thunder lurched into motion. Tucker drove straight toward the Panthers. Suicide by doctrine. You never charged German heavy armor frontally, but Henderson and Holloway had a plan nobody else knew. Range to first Panther? Holloway asked, voice steady now. 680 yards, Henderson replied. Ground looks frozen solid. Perfect. Holloway traversed to the first Panther, the one that had shot Hayes, the one that was now tracking them as they advanced, the one that could kill them with one shot. The Panther fired. The round missed by inches. Holloway felt the concussion through the turret, heard the supersonic crack as it passed. 600 yards, Henderson called. I need 400 to be sure of the angle. You'll get it. Tucker drove like he was possessed. Straight at the Panther. No zigzagging. No evasion. A straight-line sprint across open ground. The Panther was reloading. 7-second cycle. Oklahoma Thunder had maybe 3 seconds before the German gunner was ready again. 500 yards. Closer! The second Panther fired at Hayes's evacuating crew. The round hit California Dreaming again. The Sherman exploded. Ammunition detonation. The crew had gotten far enough away. Barely. 150 yards. Okay, halt! Tucker hit the brakes. The Sherman skidded to a stop on the frozen ground. Holloway was already aiming. Not at the Panther's turret. Not at the glacis plate. At the ground 6 feet in front of the Panther's tracks. 12-degree depression angle. Exactly like practice. The Panther's gun was swinging toward them. 3 seconds from firing! Firing! Holloway squeezed the trigger. The 75mm gun roared. The AP round hit the frozen ground exactly where Holloway aimed. The impact threw up a shower of frozen dirt and sparks. The round ricocheted upward at approximately 18 degrees. Steeper than Holloway's calculation, but still good. The round skipped into the Panther's belly. Armor. The Panther was approximately 18 inches, off the ground, on its suspension. The round hit the underside of the hull between the front drive sprocket and the first road wheel. The belly armor was 40 millimeters. The round was designed to penetrate 90 millimeters. It punched through like tin foil. The round entered the crew compartment from below. It didn't detonate. AP rounds are solid shot, but it fragmented. Pieces of hardened steel and armor spalling ricocheted through the interior at supersonic velocity. The Panther stopped moving. 3 seconds of silence. Then smoke began pouring from every hatch. Hit! Garza yelled. Holy shit, we hit it! Did we kill it? Henderson demanded. Holloway kept the gun aimed, watched through his periscope, waiting for return fire, waiting for the turret to traverse. It didn't move. 10 seconds. 20. 30. A German crew member climbed out of the commander's hatch. Then another, both moving slowly. Injured. One was bleeding from his head. They dropped to the ground and ran toward the tree line. She's dead, Holloway said quietly. Crew's bailing. The second Panther was already turning to run. German tank commanders were trained to withdraw if they lost their support. Solo Panthers were vulnerable. The commander knew it. Second Panther's retreating, Henderson reported over the battalion net. First Panther destroyed. Crew evacuated. Say again, Oklahoma Thunder? The battalion commander's voice, skeptical. You destroyed a Panther frontally at what range? 450 yards, sir. Frontal engagement. With a 75mm gun? Yes, sir. How? Henderson looked at Holloway. Holloway shook his head slightly. Not yet. Not until they were sure it wasn't a fluke. Lucky shot, sir, Henderson lied. Hit a weak point. Acknowledged. RTB for debriefing. Good work. Tucker drove Oklahoma Thunder forward to Hayes's position. The crew was intact. Miller had taken shrapnel in his leg but was walking. Hayes looked like he'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. You saved us, Hayes said when Henderson climbed out. That charge was insane. That shot was impossible. Not impossible, Henderson replied. Just unorthodox. Hayes looked at Oklahoma Thunder. Looked at the burning Panther 450 yards behind them. What did you do? I watched the round hit the ground first. It ricocheted. Ricocheted? On purpose? Henderson glanced at Holloway, who was still in the turret. My gunner had a theory about physics. Hayes stared. Did it work, or was it luck? We'll find out, Henderson said. They found out 2 hours later. At 10:47 hours, Oklahoma Thunder encountered another Panther near a village called Trois Ponts. Solo tank. Hull down position behind a farm building. Range, 520 yards. Holloway didn't hesitate this time. He aimed at the ground 7 feet in front of the Panther. 10-degree depression angle. Adjusted for the slightly softer ground. Less frozen than that morning. Firing. The round skipped. Hit the Panther's belly. Penetrated. Smoke poured from the engine deck. The Panther tried to reverse, but the engine was hit. Dead in place. The crew bailed immediately. 2 for 2. That wasn't luck, Henderson said over the intercom. That was repeatable. At 15:23 hours, they found a third Panther. This one was moving, advancing toward American infantry positions. Range 380 yards. Moving target. Harder shot. Holloway led it slightly, aimed at where the ground would be by the time the Panther reached that point. Accounted for the tank's speed, about 15 miles per hour. Firing. The round skipped. The Panther drove right into the Ricochet's path. The round hit the belly armor between the third and fourth road wheels. Direct hit. The Panther's ammunition detonated. The turret blew off and tumbled end over end. Nobody got out, 3 for 3. December 19, 1944. Morning. The fourth Panther appeared at dawn during a German counterattack. 4 Panthers and 2 Tigers pushing toward Stavelot. American lines were thin. 12 Shermans against 6 German heavies. Bad odds. Holloway's hands weren't shaking anymore. The Panthers came in a wedge formation. Lead tank at 600 yards, 2 more flanking at 700 and 650. The Tigers hung back at 900, providing overwatch. Other Sherman crews engaged with standard doctrine. Aim for frontal weak points, turret rings, lower plates, vision ports, rounds sparked off armor, no penetrations. The Panthers returned fire. Methodical, professional. 1 Sherman brewed up on the first volley. Another took a hit that disabled its tracks. Oklahoma Thunder, engage lead Panther, the company commander ordered. Engaging, Henderson replied. Holloway aimed at the ground in front of the lead Panther. The tank was moving, which complicated the shot. Moving at about 12 miles per hour. Distance, 580 yards. He led the target. Aimed where the Panther would be in 2 seconds. Accounted for the ground slope. Slightly uphill, which would steepen the Ricochet angle. Adjusted depression to 9 degrees. Firing. The round hit the ground, skipped, and caught the Panther in the belly as it rolled forward. The tank stopped instantly. Smoke. Crew bailed. 4 for 4. Did Oklahoma Thunder just kill a Panther? Someone asked over the radio. Confirmed, Henderson replied. How? Unorthodox tactics. Continuing engagement. The second Panther was already turning toward them. The German commander had seen Oklahoma Thunder's shot and knew they were dangerous. The Panther's gun was traversing. 4 seconds from firing, Garza had already reloaded. 4-second load time. Perfect synchronization. Holloway traversed right. Found the second Panther. Range, 670 yards. Stationary now. Easier shot. Firing. Ricochet, skip, impact, penetration. The Panther's engine caught fire. Crew bailed. 5 for 5. The third Panther broke and ran. German commanders were trained to withdraw when facing unexpected losses. The crew had just watched 2 Panthers die in 30 seconds to a single Sherman, using a technique they'd never seen. The Tigers opened fire from 900 yards. Too far for Holloway to attempt a ricochet. The angle calculations became too unpredictable past 700 yards. Oklahoma Thunder withdrew behind cover. But the momentum had shifted. 5 Sherman tanks against 2 Tigers and 1 retreating Panther. The Germans withdrew. December 20th, 1944. Word had spread through the company. Oklahoma Thunder had killed 5 Panthers in 2 days using some kind of ground ricochet technique. Other tank commanders wanted to know how. Henderson called a meeting that evening. 6 Sherman crews. He brought Holloway. Show them, Henderson said. Holloway explained the physics, showed his calculations, described the aiming technique. You need frozen or hard ground. You need to estimate the range precisely. Aim 6 to 8 feet in front of the target. 10 to 12 degree depression angle. The round will skip into the belly armor. 40 millimeters. Easy penetration. A tank commander named Captain Richards from Tennessee spoke up. The manual doesn't authorize this. This is a waste of ammunition if it doesn't work. It works, Henderson said. 5 for 5. What if the ground's too soft? What if you miss the ricochet angle? What if the round skips over the target? Then you reload and fire again, Holloway said. Same as if you'd missed a standard shot. But standard shots don't penetrate Panthers frontally. This does, another commander, Lieutenant Morrison from New York. What does battalion say? Battalion doesn't know yet, Henderson admitted. We've been reporting lucky hits on weak points. Because this is unauthorized. Because this works and we're trying to keep our crews alive while we prove it's not a fluke. Morrison looked at his own gunner. You think you can do this? The gunner, a sergeant named Davis, nodded slowly. I can try. Better than bouncing rounds off Glace's plates until they kill us. Richard still looked skeptical. If this goes wrong, command's going to crush whoever's doing it. 5 Panthers in 2 days, Henderson said quietly. 0 American losses in those engagements. You want to keep dying by doctrine, or do you want to start winning? December 21st, 1944. 3 more Sherman crews tried the ricochet technique. 2 succeeded. 1 missed his angles and wasted 3 rounds, before his commander ordered him to switch back to standard doctrine. But the 2 who succeeded killed 2 more Panthers. 7 total Panthers, destroyed by ricochet shots in 3 days. The Germans, noticed? December 22, 1944 A. Captured German Panther crew was being interrogated by American intelligence. The crew had abandoned their tank after taking a hit from below. The interrogation report noted something unusual. Enemy crew reports being struck by a round that impacted the underside of the vehicle. Crew believes round was fired by ground-based anti-tank gun positioned in a foxhole or crater, though no such position was observed. Crew describes extreme confusion about source of fire. The German crews didn't understand what was happening. Panthers were being hit from below when they were fighting Shermans from the front. It didn't make sense. American doctrine was to flank. These hits were coming from frontal engagements. One Panther commander reported over German radio nets, American tactics have changed. They are targeting our hulls with an unknown weapon. Recommend increased spacing and avoidance of static positions. The Germans thought the Americans had deployed a new anti-tank gun. Some crews thought it was aircraft dropping bombs. Nobody realized it was Sherman skipping rounds off the ground. The psychological effect was immediate. German tank commanders became cautious. Panthers that had previously held defensive positions aggressively now withdrew more quickly. The legendary German armor confidence was cracking. December 23, 1944. Battalion Command finally noticed the pattern. 7 Panthers destroyed in 4 days, all by tanks in the same company, all reporting frontal engagements and lucky hits. Major William Patterson, Battalion S3 Operations Officer, drove to Henderson's position personally. Lieutenant, your after-action reports are raising questions, Patterson said. 7 Panthers in 4 days with 75mm guns at frontal ranges. That's statistically impossible. Henderson had known this was coming. Not impossible, sir. Difficult, but not impossible. Show me. Henderson looked at Holloway. Holloway climbed out of the turret. He brought his notebook. He explained everything. The physics, the calculations, the practice sessions, the 5 confirmed kills, the technique spreading to other crews. Patterson listened in silence. His face gave nothing away. When Holloway finished, Patterson said, "This is not authorized doctrine. You've been conducting unauthorized firing techniques in combat without clearing it through proper channels." "Yes, sir. You've also killed 7 Panthers in 4 days with 0 friendly casualties in those engagements." "Yes, sir." Patterson looked at the notebook full of calculations, looked at Oklahoma Thunder, looked back at Holloway. "Where'd you learn this?" "Hunting rabbits in Oklahoma, sir. My grandfather taught me about ricochets." Patterson actually smiled. "Your grandfather should be teaching at Fort Knox." He turned to Henderson. "I need to see this work. Next engagement. I'm riding with you." December 24, 1944. Christmas Eve. Major Patterson was in Oklahoma Thunder's turret, standing in the loader's position when they encountered 2 Panthers near Manhay. Range, 550 and 620 yards. Holloway went through his routine, calculated angles, accounted for ground hardness, aimed at the dirt in front of the closer Panther, firing, ricochet, skip, impact. The Panther died. Crew bailed. Garza reloaded. Holloway traversed to the second Panther. It was already turning to run. Firing, second ricochet, second hit. The Panther's engine exploded. It rolled to a stop, burning. Patterson climbed out of the turret without saying a word. He walked 50 yards forward and looked at the gouges in the frozen ground where the rounds had impacted. Looked at the 2 dead Panthers. Walked back. "How many crews in this battalion can do this?" he asked Henderson. 3 for certain. Maybe 5 if they practice. How many crews could learn it? Holloway spoke up. "Anyone with a good gunner and a tank commander who trusts him. The physics are solid. It's just geometry and practice." Patterson nodded slowly. "As of right now, this technique is officially sanctioned for field use. I'm authorizing all tank commanders in this battalion to employ ricochet firing at their discretion." "Sir?" Henderson looked surprised. "You've found something that works. Something that kills Panthers without losing our people. I'm not going to let doctrine get in the way of that." Patterson looked at Holloway. "I need you to teach this. Every gunner in the battalion. Starting tomorrow. December 25th, 1944. Christmas Day." Holloway spent the morning teaching 23 tank gunners how to calculate ricochet angles. He drew diagrams in the snow with a stick, showed his notebook, explained the variables, ground hardness, range estimation, depression angles, target speed. Some gunners got it immediately. Others struggled with the geometry. A few were skeptical. "This seems like a trick shot," one gunner from Ohio said. "What if I miss?" "You reload and shoot again," Holloway replied. "Same as always. But if you get it right, you kill a Panther that would have killed you." "What's the success rate?" "I'm 8 for 8. Lieutenant Hayes's gunner is 3 for 4. Captain Morrison's crew is 2 for 3. The technique works if you practice and you calculate correctly." That afternoon, Patterson authorized live fire practice. 3 rounds per crew. A wrecked German half-track served as the target. Range 400 yards. 17 crews attempted the shot. 11 succeeded at least once. 6 couldn't get the angle right and wasted all 3 rounds. "The 11 who succeeded are authorized to use this in combat," Patterson announced. "The 6 who failed get 3 more rounds tomorrow to qualify. Anyone who still can't do it after that sticks with standard doctrine." By December 27th, 13 crews had qualified on the ricochet technique. The results were immediate and dramatic. December 26th, 2 Panthers destroyed by ricochet shots. 0 American losses. December 27th, 3 Panthers destroyed. 1 Sherman lost to a Tiger. Too far for ricochet. Crew tried standard doctrine and failed. December 28th, 4 Panthers destroyed. 0 American losses. December 29th, 2 Panthers and 1 Panzer I-4 destroyed. The Panzer Safter's belly armor was even thinner than the Panther's. The ricochet technique killed it at 680 yards. December 30th, 5 Panthers destroyed in a single engagement when 8 Sherman crews coordinated ricochet fire simultaneously. The German tank commanders broke and retreated after losing 3 tanks in 90 seconds. In 7 days, 3rd Armored Division killed 23 German heavy tanks using ricochet techniques. American losses: 4 Shermans, 3 to Tigers at ranges too far for ricochet, 1 to a German anti-tank gun. The kill ratio had reversed. For every American tank lost, they were killing nearly 6 German heavy tanks. German radio intercepts showed panic. American tank fire has become extremely effective. Source unclear. Recommend avoiding combat with Sherman formations unless numerical superiority is 3-1 or greater. Panther losses are unsustainable. American tank guns appear to have been upgraded. Multiple vehicles penetrated frontally. Unknown American anti-tank weapon operating in sector. Possibly new tank destroyer or artillery? Extreme caution advised. They still didn't realize it was just Sherman's shooting at the dirt. January 2, 1945. A German Panther company commander named Hauptmann Klaus Weber was killed when his tank took a ricochet hit during a withdrawal near Hufaleis. His unit recovered his body and personal effects. His diary was captured 2 days later by American infantry. Intelligence translated it. The final entry, dated January 1, 1945, read, "We have lost 12 Panthers in 8 days. All to American Shermans. Frontal engagements. This should be impossible. Sherman guns cannot penetrate our frontal armor. Yet they are. I do not understand the mechanism, but I have observed impacts on the lower hull in several cases. It is as if the Americans have learned to fire through the ground itself. My crews are frightened. They no longer trust the armor. We are withdrawing from any engagement where we do not have overwhelming advantage. The Americans have found something. God help us." Weber died the next day. His Panther took a ricochet hit from 480 yards. The round penetrated the belly armor, fragmented, and killed Weber and his gunner instantly. The rest of the crew survived. January 5, 1945. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Parker, commanding officer of the 3rd Armored Division's tank battalions, called a briefing for all company commanders. "Gentlemen, over the past 3 weeks, we have destroyed 47 German heavy tanks using a firing technique developed by Staff Sergeant Marcus Holloway, a gunner in Lieutenant Henderson's crew. This technique has reduced our loss rate by approximately 60% in engagements with Panthers and significantly improved crew morale." Parker paused. "As of today, this technique is authorized for all crews in this division. Gunnery instructors will teach it as an alternative engagement method. Sergeant Holloway will be temporarily assigned to division headquarters to develop a training program." He looked directly at Henderson. "I'm recommending Sergeant Holloway for the Silver Star. His innovation has saved an estimated 80 to 100 American lives in the past 3 weeks alone." Henderson saluted. "He deserves it, sir." Parker nodded. "He also deserves a promotion. As of today, he's Technical Sergeant Holloway." January 1945 to May 1945. The ricochet technique spread beyond 3rd Armored Division. Tank crews from other divisions observed it during joint operations. Word spread through letters and informal channels. Gunners taught it to friends in other units. By February 1945, at least 7 American armored divisions were using ricochet firing in some capacity. The technique worked best with 75mm guns. The 76mm high-velocity guns had different ballistics that made ricochet angles harder to calculate, but even 76mm crews experimented with it. The official Army reaction was complicated. Ordnance Department engineers at Aberdeen Proving Ground heard about the technique in late January. They immediately began testing it scientifically. Their report, dated February 12, 1945, concluded, "Ricochet firing against armored vehicles is feasible under specific conditions. Frozen or hard-packed ground, ranges between 300 and 600 yards, depression angles between 8 and 14 degrees depending on range and ground hardness. Penetration of ventral armor is consistent when impact angle is correct. However, technique requires significant gunner skill and is unreliable on soft ground or at extended ranges. Not recommended as primary doctrine, but acceptable as alternative engagement method when standard penetration is not achievable." Translation: "It works, but we're not going to make it official because it's too hard to teach and too dependent on ground conditions." The report went to the Armored Force Board at Fort Knox. They added ricochet firing to the curriculum as an advanced technique for experienced gunners. It wasn't mandatory. Most instructors didn't teach it, but it was now officially in the manual, buried in an appendix. Holloway never got credit by name. The manual listed it as Alternative Engagement Method, Ground Ricochet. No mention of who invented it. No mention of Oklahoma, Thunder, or the 3rd Armored Division. The Silver Star recommendation was downgraded to a Bronze Star for meritorious service. Holloway received it in March 1945 at a battalion ceremony. The citation mentioned innovative tactical thinking, but didn't explain what he'd actually done. Henderson was furious. Patterson was furious. Several other officers protested. They were told, "We don't want to create the impression that standard doctrine was inadequate. This was a field adaptation, not a failure of Army training, politics, and bureaucracy, even in the middle of a war." But the crews knew. Every tanker in the 3rd Armored Division knew Holloway's name, knew he'd figured out how to kill Panthers when everyone else was dying, knew he'd saved dozens of lives. They painted Holloway's hop shot on their tank barrels. Not officially authorized, nobody stopped them. Marcus Holloway survived the war. Oklahoma Thunder was hit by a German anti-tank gun on March 3, 1945, near Cologne. The round penetrated the side armor and killed Eddie Garza instantly. The rest of the crew survived. Holloway took shrapnel in his left arm but stayed in action. They got a new loader, Private Dennis O'Connor from Philadelphia, 19 years old, terrified. Holloway taught him the Ricochet technique. 2 weeks later, O'Connor was loading for the shot that killed Holloway's 12th and final Panther. 12 confirmed Panther kills, 3 Panzer IVs, 1 Jagd Panther tank destroyer, 16 total German armored vehicles destroyed between December 18, 1944, and April 21, 1945. 0 friendly casualties during those engagements. Oklahoma Thunder crew statistics. Lieutenant Paul Henderson survived 87 combat missions, Distinguished Service Cross for actions on January 15 during a different engagement, returned to Connecticut, became a high school history teacher, died 1998, age 78, Corporal James Tucker, survived 87 combat missions, Purple Heart for wounds received on April 12, 1945, returned to Detroit, worked for Ford Motor Company for 42 years, died 2003, age 81. Private Roy Patterson, killed in action, April 29, 1945. Shot by a sniper while dismounted during infantry support operations, 8 days before Germany surrendered. He was 23 years old, buried in Alabama. Private Eddie Garza, killed in action, March 3, 1945. Age 21. Buried in San Antonio with full military honors. Private Dennis O'Connor. Survived 31 combat missions with Oklahoma Thunder crew. Returned to Philadelphia. Became a police officer. Died 2012, age 86. Technical Sergeant Marcus Holloway. Survived 91 combat missions. Bronze Star. Purple Heart. Returned to Tulsa in July 1945. Married his high school girlfriend, Sarah, in August. Worked as a mechanic, then owned a small auto repair shop. Had 3 children. Rarely talked about the war. Estimated lives saved by Ricochet technique. Between 80 and 100 American tank crew, members who would have died in engagements with German heavy armor between December 1944 and May 1945. Estimated German tank losses, attributable to Ricochet technique. Approximately 70 to 90 Panthers and Panzer IVs in the European theater. Strategic impact. German tank commanders became significantly more cautious in engagements with American armor in 1945. The psychological effect of suddenly losing their armor advantage forced more defensive German tactics, which aided Allied advances in the final months of the war. Official recognition: none. The technique was documented in training manuals as alternative engagement method, ground Ricochet, with no attribution to Holloway or the 3rd Armored Division. Long-term military impact. The Ricochet technique was studied after the war, but never formally adopted as doctrine. The development of high-velocity tank guns, 90 mm and larger, that could penetrate heavy armor frontally, made Ricochet techniques obsolete by the 1950s. The technique was removed from training manuals in 1952. Marcus Holloway lived until 2001. He was 83 years old. In his later years, he reconnected with the surviving Oklahoma Thunder crew members every December 18th, an annual phone call. Sometimes Henderson would fly down to Tulsa. They'd sit in Holloway's garage, drink coffee, and remember, "You saved my life." Henderson told him every time. "You saved Hayes. You saved 100 other guys who never knew your name." "I just shot at the dirt," Holloway would reply. Physics did the rest. When people asked about the war, Holloway would say he was a tank mechanic. Technically true, he did maintain Oklahoma Thunder. He never mentioned the Ricochet technique unless someone specifically asked about combat. Even then, he'd say, "We figured out a trick that worked for a while. That's all." In 1998, a military historian named Dr. Robert Chen, nephew of Sergeant Bobby Chen, who died in the First Golden Gate Sherman, was researching 3rd Armored Division combat records. He found the after-action reports, found the pattern of Panther kills, found Henderson's name, tracked him down. Henderson told him about Holloway. Chen interviewed Holloway in 1999, recorded 8 hours of conversation, verified the statistics with Army archives, German records, and interviews with 6 other surviving crew members who'd used the technique. Chen published a paper in 2000, Innovation Under Fire, Unauthorized Field Tactics in the 3rd Armored Division, December 1944, May 1945. The paper estimated Holloway's Ricochet technique saved between 80 and 120 American lives and destroyed approximately 85 German heavy tanks. The paper concluded, "Tactical innovation in combat rarely emerges from official channels or high-level strategic planning. It emerges from junior enlisted personnel and non-commissioned officers who observe problems, develop solutions, test them under fire, and implement them without waiting for authorization." The Army's failure to officially recognize Sergeant Holloway's contribution reflects an institutional bias toward preserving doctrine over acknowledging field adaptation. Holloway read the paper. His only comment, "He got the math right." Marcus Holloway died on March 15, 2001, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His funeral was attended by 4 surviving Oklahoma Thunder crew members, 23 veterans from the 3rd Armored Division, and representatives from 7 other Sherman crews who'd learned the Ricochet technique. His granddaughter found his old notebook in the garage, the one with the geometry calculations and ricochet angles. It's now in the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. Small display case. Label reads, Technical Sergeant Marcus J. Holloway's Combat Calculations, 1944-1945. Holloway developed an unauthorized firing technique that saved an estimated 120 American lives during combat operations in Europe. That's how innovation actually happens in war, not through official channels or engineering committees or Pentagon planning sessions, through sergeants and mechanics and farm kids from Oklahoma who see a problem, remember something their grandfather taught them, and don't wait for permission to save lives. Every tank crew that survived because of that technique deserves to be remembered. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be told. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, subscribe to stay connected to these stories, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and if you have family members who served in armored units during World War II, thank you for keeping these stories alive.